What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was banished and returned stronger than every Otsutsuki? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. There are two types of power, the physical and mental kind. Many of the most powerful people in the world were of the physical kind and were feared for their ability to annihilate their enemies with strength, speed and skill. Very few have been known to use mental power, but sometimes they are the worst. Able to ruin a person's life with a single word. It was even rarer for a person to use both kinds of power, but when they do it creates a force greater than any other. This is the story of Naruto Otsutsuki, third son of Kagaya Otsutsuki and first son the Jubi. This is the story of how nothing stood in his way. Otsutsuki rise. Dismantling Konoha. The land of fire was home to many clans, but the most famous of them were the Senju and the Uchiha. The most feared of the clans though was the Otsutsuki clan. Not much was known about them except that they were a small clan of only a few members, but some had shown bloodlines belonging to 3 clans. The Uchiha's Sharingan, the Hyuga's Byakugan, and the Kaguya's Shikatsumaku. It was also due to their incredible intellect and uncanny ability to collect information on all clans. Nothing escaped them and because of that they were feared. Moving through the forest of the land of fire 5 men walked. They walked in a triangle formation. The 2 figures at the back were completely white with spiked horn-like protrusions coming out around their shoulder area. It had a masculine figure with yellow-green eyes, green hair and 4 scars on his face. 2 came extending from the corner of his mouth and to his ears, the other 2 went up from either side of his face and through his eyes. They both carried naginata with the one on the right carrying it in his right hand, while the one on the left carried it in his left hand. In the second row were 2 completely different figures. The one on the right had the left side of his face like the 2 figures behind him, minus the scars. The right side was completely black with a single round, yellow-green eye. Surrounding his head was a Venus flytrap-like protrusions that surrounded his face. The second a muscular body seen on a bodybuilder. He had black eyes and had single scar going over the left corner of his mouth and disappeared under his clothing. His bald head shined in the sunlight that reached the forest floor. His clothing consisted of a big bulky piece of armor that left his back unprotected, as well as his armpits. He also wore black studded fingerless gloves and to finish it off a large double-bladed axe was strapped to his back. The man in the front had spiky, white hair that reached down to his shoulders, shining blue eyes and lightly tanned skin. His body was lean and muscular which was built for speed. It was hardly hidden by a high-collared, light-colored kimono held closed by a dark sash. The collar of the kimono was adorned by white magatama, and underneath was a black full-bodied suit. Strapped to his hip was a katana with a simple, open-framed crossguard, a bronze guard and a lavender hilt. The silence that was over them was deafening. Like all things however, they must come to an end. Naruto-sama, why exactly are we traveling to this place called Konohagakure, to discuss the alliance of all the clans of the Land of Fire? The elders have already expressed their disgust over the alliance. Asked the armored man towards the now named Naruto. The man in question turned to face the armored man while continuing to walk. I am the clan head of the Otsutsuki. The elders are simply pawns for me to exploit. I will decide whether the alliance with the Uchiha and the Senju is beneficial for my clan or not. ID that understood Guan. Said Naruto. Forgive me Naruto-sama, I meant no offense. Guan said. Nodding his head Naruto faced the man beside him. Zetsu, go on ahead and make sure we are not being followed. Nodding his head the Venus flytrap figure disappeared into the ground. With that done the 3 carried on walking through the forest towards Konoha. Otsutsuki rise. Dismantling Konoha. Konoha will offer you protection and trade between the clans. All we ask is that your lands and your clan, including all its resources and armies to join with Konoha. Hashirama said. While the man is usual friendly and cheerful, there was times when he was a true shinobi. What if I decided not to join your little village and I chose to keep my clan independent? That seemed to shock Hashirama. With the help of Tobirama and Madara they had made sure the deal sounded appealing as possible. But what they hadn't accounted for was someone asking that very question. Luckily his best friend and rival was around to counter such a question. We would form a treaty of sorts allowing you to operate in your own lands without threat from us, however if you are attacked we will not come to your aid. Madara said diplomatically. Humming, Naruto turned to Madara. You make an interesting offer, Madara Uchiha. But this is a meeting between leaders and you are a simple bodyguard. Do not get involved with matters that are above you, he said, causing Madara to grit his teeth in anger. Smirking, Naruto decided to push Madara's buttons even further. You did realize that by choosing Hashirama as leader you are no longer equals. You were equals when clan heads, but now that the clans have formed one village and one leader has been chosen, you two are no longer equals. Surely you knew that when doing this? Naruto asked innocently. Jumping to his feet, Madara went to attack Naruto. However, Hashirama jumped in front of Madara, stopping him from advancing on Naruto. Madara, stop! Neither budged from their position. Madara! Hashirama shouted harshly. Glaring once more at Naruto, Madara turned on his heel and stormed out of the room. Upon seeing Madara leaving Hashirama's side and sat down, however, he didn't see the smug smirk plastered on Naruto's face. Sorry about that, Hashirama said sheepishly. It is fine, however I believe that my clan would benefit more on our own. Especially if the Uchiha clan head is so easily provoked. Nodding his head, Hashirama knew he was beaten. Due to Madara's display of anger, it was only natural to feel insecure in joining Konoha. I understand completely, but I would like to offer you a place to stay for the night. After all, you did travel a long way. Nodding his head, Naruto allowed Hashirama to lead him towards his living quarters for the night. Otsutsuki rise. Dismantling Konoha. Naruto lay on one of the beds in the room he was staying in for the night. Guan stood at the doorway with the two white Zetsus stood in a separate part of the tent. Slowly Zetsu rose from the ground. Sitting up, Naruto faced Zetsu. Has it been done? Yes, Zetsu replied. Has what been done? Asked Guan. Turning to face the man, Naruto spoke. You were right, Guan, there was no point in coming here as I already planned to decline the offer, but there was another reason for our visit. Seeing that he had Guan's full attention, he carried on. If the Uchiha, the Senju and the other clans joined together, they would grow confident and may be angered by our refusal and attack us. It's something I would do. Anyway, we have 3 reasons to be here. He held up 3 fingers before lowering 2. The first is to stop this village from being finished. We will do this by exploiting the Uchiha's thirst for power. Zetsu here. Waving his hand towards the black and white human thing, he carried on. He has been planting false information of the Uchiha clan, planning to overthrow Hashirama and force the other clans to join their cause. Specifically the Hyuga clan. This is where the second reason comes in. Snapping his fingers, the 2 Zetsu clones moved into the room, dragging the unconscious body. The boy's black hair was long with pale eyes. Who is this? Asked Guan. Hyuga Daichi, the clan heir of the Hyuga clan. We have saved him from the Uchiha clan that tried to use him as leverage to sway the Hyuga to support them. The main house of the Hyuga are too busy looking for Daichi here to notice that the entirety of the side branch has left their control. Seeing the questioning look on Guan's face, he continued. The 2 Zetsu clones have been using a seal I created that causes the caged bird seal to become null. With this, the side branch now free and joining us to get free from the main house. Guan could see where this was going. With the Otsutsuki clan retuning Daichi, the main house is indebted to us, however they won't join us merely because of that. Now without the side house protecting them, they will have no choice but to join us. Nodding his head in agreement, Guan knew exactly where this was going. When this happens, the Kaguyas who turned down our offer to join us unless we have the Hyuga part of our clan, will join us. Because of this, we will extend our lands to the Kiri and have an army on equal footing to the Uchiha and the Senju clans. Standing up, Naruto turned to Guan. Let's begin stage 2 of our plan. Otsutsuki rise. Dismantling Konoha. Halt, who goes there? Shouted one of the Hyugas that were guarding the compound of the Hyuga. Stepping forward so that the Hyuga could see who it was. Naruto stood there with Guan, the Zetsu clones and Daichi. Daichi-sama, quickly get Hoshi-sama, the same man said to the guard beside him. For a couple of minutes nothing happened before the commotion of voices could be heard. From the tent, a female and elderly-looking Daichi burst forth and engulfed the boy in a hug. Tears were shed, and soon joining the reunion was an elderly man with long black hair pulled back into a ponytail and pale eyes. Breaking from the hug, the man faced Naruto and his guards, while his own guards flanked him. Thank you, Naruto Dono. The Hyuga clan are indebted to you. He bowed low before rising. Is there any way we can repay you? Asked Hoshi. As you know, the Uchiha cannot be trusted. That is why the Otsutsuki clan refuses to join this alliance. Naruto said calmly, drawing a nod of Hoshi's head. I know that is why we are too withdrawing from the alliance and becoming independent. Yes, anyway, we would like the Hyuga clan to join the Otsutsuki clan as you were once part of our clan a long time ago. I would like for that to be so once more, said Naruto. Absolutely not. I have already subjected myself to one alliance, look how that turned out. The guards of the Hyuga pointed their kunai, swords and other weapons at Naruto and his guards, their Byakugan activated and ready. Naruto's eyes changed from the usual light blue to a deep red with 3 magatama circling the pupil. The Zetsu clones pointed their naginata at the guards. Guan drew his battle axe and from his forearms multiple bones sprouted. Calmly Naruto raised his hand, causing his guard to relax. Yes, I know, however you are family and for that reason I will not betray you. Besides, the side branch have already chosen to join me. In shock, Hoshi turned to face the guards surrounding him. They too had relaxed. Is this true? Yes, Hoshi-sama. Naruto-sama has freed us from the caged bird seal and so we agreed to join his clan. One of the guards spoke. I see. Defeat was clearly heard in his voice. I guess we have no choice. Excellent. Allowing his Sharingan to fade, he turned around and left. Otsutsuki rise. Dismantling Konoha. It took 2 weeks before Konoha was finally abandoned. After the Hyuga left, the Akamichi, Nara, Yamanaka, Inuzuka and Aburame clans left soon after. The Shimura and the Sarutobi clan soon followed as well. After this, the Lee, Hitaki, Kurama and the Kohaku clans joined the Otsutsuki clan and with it their territory grew. Now the once small clan had enough resources, territory and troops to go head-to-head with the Senju and the Uchiha clans. With the Kaguyas also joining, their might and fear factor increased greatly. To the point even the Senju Uchiha alliance that had somehow managed to stay intact was hesitant to engage in combat with the Otsutsuki. War, a common concept in all things. It is a constant that will always appear throughout history, just like fear. Most wars are started out of fear of others' power. When in fear of a powerful country declaring war on you, the common thing to do is to amass your troops. Bolster your ranks and supply them with supplies, and the greatest equipment. It is no different even in the time of the shinobi. The clan wars had ended prematurely when the Senju and the Uchiha planned to create a village. When this plan failed and the fear of the Uchiha continued to grow, all the clans secured their borders. It was all because of one man. All because of a dream. A dream to escape the shadow his family had cast upon him. Otsutsuki rise. War continues. Hashirama Dono. Madara Dono, I am confused in how the failure of your village is my fault. Naruto said innocently. He sat crossed-legged on the floor in front of a coffee table that was low to the ground. Across from him sat Madara and Hashirama, who were also sat crossed-legged. Naruto wore a simple white kimono held closed by a light gray sash. Hashirama wore a white kimono with a black undertop. Madara wore a dark blue near black with the Uchiha symbol on the back. I believe you know perfectly well what we're talking about, Naruto Dono. Madara ground out. You were the only clan to reject our offer, and it was also well known that the elders of the Otsutsuki clan were appalled by the alliance. Your point is? What Madara was saying was that no Uchiha was authorized to capture the Hyuga clan heir, and even if one was to, it seems to be amazingly coincidental that you so happened to save the boy. Hashirama said. I see your point, however, who told you that no Uchiha was authorized to capture Daichi? Was it Madara? Asked Naruto. Yes, but nothing. Who's to say that Madara isn't lying? Hashirama opened his mouth and closed it before shutting it completely. Naruto presented a valid point, a point he could not argue against. I did not order an Uchiha member to kidnap the Hyuga heir, exclaimed Madara in outrage. I never said you did. Only that it's a possibility. Naruto spoke calmly, even in the presence of a man who was on par with the Shinobi no Kami, god of shinobi. Now I doubt the reason you came here was to clean up the mess caused by your failure of a dream. So what is the real reason you came here? As you can tell, the clans have been amassing their forces and securing their borders. This is a sign that the clan wars are starting, something me and Madara tried to stop by forming the village, however that failed as you know. Hashirama spoke. So I'm guessing that you want to do something about that problem? Yes, we do. Madara continued. We have carried on our alliance, however if you joined this alliance as well the other clans would have no choice, but to join us or foolishly sacrifice their clan in a suicidal attempt. I refuse. But, no, I refused to join an alliance when all clans were involved and I will not join it now. The only way this will work if you follow the Lee, Kurama, Kohaku, Hitaki, Kagaya and Hyuga clans. Your clans become part of mine. Absolutely not, shouted Madara. I agree. I too will not subject my clan to join yours. Hashirama said. Very well. War it is then. All three of them stood up. I shall allow you safe passage out of my territory, but once you cross your own boundary the war will begin. His voice was calm and collected. No hint of remorse or regret could be heard. Otsutsuki rise. War continues. Naruto looked at the map before him. It was a map of the Land of Fire. His territory was in the northwest of the Land of Fire and was surrounded by the Land of Rain, Grass, Waterfall and Iron. The Uchiha clan was situated in the south, while the Senju was in the north. The center was taken up by the Akamichi, Nara and Yamanaka. Down on the borders of the Land of Tea and Waves was the Aburame, Sarutobi, Shimura and Inazuka clans. Multiple alliances had been formed. Like always the Nara, Yamanaka and the Akamichi had stayed as allies and were currently funding the Uchiha and the Senju in their fight against the Otsutsuki. In return they would not be attacked by the Uchiha-Senju alliance. Sarutobi and Shimura had allied themselves together in order to engage the Aburame-Inazuka alliance. It was all-out war in the Land of Fire. Multiple small, wooden statues resembled the armies of each clan. Currently the Inazuka and Aburame had all their armies engaging all the Sarutobi-Shimura armies. All except two which were kept in reserve. The armies of the Yamanaka, Akamichi and the Naras were securing their borders and only allowing small supply carts to pass in and out after been thoroughly checked. The Uchiha due to their overwhelming numbers had their 6 armies split into 3 points. 2 armies were each positioned at an outpost from where they could send out troops in a continuous stream. The Senju who had better trained troops had 2 armies at 2 points from where they would launch single strikes that would hopefully result in victory. His armies, however, stayed near the capital. Around the room stood Guan in a traditional kimono. Beside him stood a younger version of him except his face was without facial hair, but was much more rounded in the middle. This was Hachiro Kagaya, younger brother of Guan and one of his most trusted generals. There was a lean and muscular man with long, white hair. His eyes were black in color, a great contrast to his hair. This was Guro Otsutsuki. He wore a gray kimono with black sash keeping it closed. Beside him stood Hoshi who had been given the position of general in his army. Guan and Hoshi will take your armies here. He pointed to the area in which the Uchiha's armies were amassing. You will destroy 2 of the 3 bridges there so that the Uchiha's armies will have to funnel down through this bridge due to the nearest crossing beside this is in Yamanaka territory. This will take away the advantage in numbers that the Uchiha have. Hachiro and Guro, you will move your men to the canyon and slow down all and any attempt the Senju try to perform. Naruto ordered. You have your assignments. Do not let me down, is that understood? Yes, Naruto-sama. Dismissed. With a wave of his hand the generals disappeared. Zetsu. From the ground rose the multi-faced man. What news do you have on the Biju-tailed beasts? The Ichibi, one-tails, has been spotted in the Land of Wind and is currently terrorizing multiple towns. Recently the village Sanagakure under the lead of Reto, the Shodai Case Cage has launched a team of sealers to capture him. The Nibi, 2 tails, and Hachibi, 8 tails, are currently somewhere in the Land of Lightning and Frost. The Sanbi, 3 tails, and Rokubi, 6 tails, have been seen in Landwater. The Yonbi, 4 tails, and the Gobi, 5 tails, has been seen in the Land of Earth and Stone. The Kyubi, 9 tails, has been seen in the Land of Fire. Both halves spoke. Smirking Naruto stared at the map deep in thought. Otsutsuki rise. War continues. Hoshi and Guan stood side by side. They each wore their battle outfits which for Hoshi consisted of gray samurai armor. Their army of multiple clans numbered around 1,000 strong. The clans had become incredibly loyal to the Otsutsuki clan and had been accepted into the clan, especially the side branch of the Hyuga clan. That's not to say that the main house hadn't benefited. In fact, life was much better under the service of the Otsutsuki, especially the clan head Naruto. All clans' heads had been given a position on the council, replacing the old and power-hungry elders. In return, the Hyuga clan had become completely loyal to the Otsutsuki. The Uchiha armies were easily seen, their flags high up in the air with the Uchiha fan proudly shown. There was a total of around 1,800 men in the army. 600 were split to each bridge, which had a spacing of 25 miles between each, and each were walking steadily forwards, unaware of the army ready to greet them at the other side. This is not going to be easy. Hoshi spoke to Guan. Yes, but Naruto-sama has given us a command to stop the advance of the Uchiha. We of the Otsutsuki clan and me especially shall carry out his will. Hoshi seemed a little surprised by the conviction and loyalty that Guan showed when speaking about Naruto. If you don't mind me asking, Guan, why are you so loyal to Naruto-sama? For the first time, Guan allowed a small smile to cross his features. I don't mind at all. In fact, you will see how great Naruto-sama is. Guan said, I didn't know Naruto at first, but I went out hunting with my father and got lost. Flashback. Running through the forest, a young Guan of around 10. In his hand he carried a spear. Moments ago he had been hunting with his father and a few others, the next he ended up getting lost. Now he was trying to find his way back home or to his father. He treated it as a challenge. If he did this, maybe his father would respect him more. The howling of a wolf made him snap his head to the side. More howling could be heard, and with each one his head turned in the general direction of the noise. Gripping his spear tightly, he faced the bushes and watched as a growling wolf came out of it, flanked by two more. Their hairs were stuck on end in a threatening manner. His eyes were fixated on them in a staring match, and they returned his stare with equal vigor, but hunger was in their eyes. His foot shuffled across the ground and accidentally caused a twig to snap. With that noise, the wolves ran forwards. He knocked the first to the side with the end of his stick and sent it sprawling on the floor. The second went to hit him, but he positioned his spear so that the wolf's jaws locked around it instead of his shoulder. Swinging to the side, the wolf rolled across the ground. The third bit down tightly on his arm, making him scream out in pain, so using his spear he stabbed it in the head, causing it to go limp and release his arm. Howling was heard as more and more wolves appeared from the forest and surrounded him. He swung his spear at each of the wolves that tried to come near him. Slowly his energy left him, so it was only natural that when he swung at a wolf, a few others pounced on his vulnerability. Teeth and claws sunk into his flesh, making him scream out in pain. It was in that moment he realized his fate. He was going to die. Killing intent burst from the tree line and washed over everything. It made him feel fear greater than he had ever felt in his entire life. Greater than even his father's. The wolves whimpered in fright and moved backwards, revealing Guan to the world. His body was covered in claw marks, with teeth marks littering his shoulders and torso. From the shadows came Naruto himself, dressed in his kimono that was decorated in magatama. A sword lay loosely tucked into his sash. He moved forward and allowed his hands to glow green and placed them over his body. Guan, however, stared up at the man in awe and thank you. That was the last thing he muttered before unconsciousness claimed him. Flashback end. After I woke up, I promised to forever serve Naruto-sama. My brother joined me too in my journey. Hoshi nodded his head in understanding. Many loyal soldiers were formed when they were saved by their masters from near death. I see. He turned to face the incoming armies. They're getting awfully close, wouldn't you say, Guan-san? Hoshi said, unbothered by the fact that they were outnumbered. The story Guan had just told had sparked something inside him. Guan seems like an honest man, and if what he says truly did happen, then I shall gladly follow you, Naruto-sama. Good. Have the archers get ready, he said, and formed the ram seal. Nodding his head, he raised his hand and a line of warriors moved forward carrying a bow and arrow. They each drew an arrow and locked it into place. The Uchiha began moving across the bridge in squares of 20 by 20. Their flags high in the air. Otsutsuki rise. War continues. Tushiro, a great leader of the village Omegakure of the Land of Rain. He had recently united the land of waterfall, grass and stone under his banner. Nothing had managed to stop his rise to power. Great leaders had fallen under his might. News of the Otsutsuki's rise to power had made him weary of his neighbor and so was willing to create a deal with one of the great leaders of Uchiha Senju Alliance. Madara Uchiha, the greatest shinobi in history, matched only by Hashirama Senju. After all, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Madara Dono greeted Toshiro. The two men in question bowed. I'm so glad you could make it. As am I. Both warriors sat down and the atmosphere became diplomatic. Now I believe that we spoke of an alliance? Yes, we did, and I agree wholly with the terms you have offered me. Smirking, Madara extended his arm and Toshiro shook it in a sign of agreement. Now shall we work out the few minor details? Oh, but of course. Otsutsuki rise. War continues. A few Uchiha had crossed the bridge, numbering around 300 men. Chakra burst from Guan's body as the archers of his army revealed themselves. The Uchiha men and women quickly charged more men over the bridge. Release. With that single word, all hell broke loose. The two bridges exploded and with it over 100 men were either killed in the explosion or fell to the ravine below. The fall itself was thousands of feet and any man would have been killed by the fall or would be severely injured. Those that had crossed the bridge were confused and disoriented. Archers. Rows of bows were raised into the sky. Loose! Exclaimed Hoshi, and with it hundreds of arrows were released. Screams of pain were heard as men and women were either killed or injured. Guan moved forward. Earth-style users move forward. Earth-style. Multiple earth spears. Multiple warriors moved forward, simultaneously shouted out the name of the attack and slammed their hands on the ground. From the ground, multiple spears of earth pierced through multiple bodies and caused more screams to be heard. This signaled the start of a battle that would be heard throughout the world. Death. It happens all around. Every second someone in the world will die. War only escalates this process. It's impossible to not have war without death. Impossible to live without dying. For you see, these two polar opposites walk hand in hand. They say that in war the true human nature comes out. They say that in death you see life through the eyes of those that you killed. Some warriors that were so great are said to be reincarnated in the next life. Naruto Otsutsuki was going to test that theory. Otsutsuki rise. War on all fronts. Earth style. Multiple earth spears. From the ground, multiple spears made entirely of earth rose up and impaled the bodies of injured and unscathed warriors alike. Nothing escaped this jutsu's range due to the amount of shinobi simultaneously casting it. More screams were heard as more Uchiha shinobi had their lives ended early. Hoshi drew his sword and raised it into the air. Following this, 500 shinobi drew swords, kunai, and some pointed their spears forward. Slowly he walked forwards so he and his men could be seen. The Uchiha shinobi saw this and prepared multiple jutsus. Archers, loose! Guan shouted. The arrows flew from the bows, over the heads of their allies and straight into the army of Uchihas. The arrows themselves were meant to stop the Uchihas from firing their jutsu or limit the amount of shinobi firing the jutsu. Fire style. Great Fireball Jutsu. Large fireballs burst forth and consumed many shinobi in their flames and heat. Upon seeing the Otsutsuki clan army still charging, the highest-ranking man ordered his men to meet them in the charge. With a roar, both armies charged forward and met in the center. Due to the Otsutsuki having the high ground, they had the added charge bonus and so mowed through the disarrayed army of the Uchiha clan. Even though they had the charge bonus, it still meant nothing in the face of the Uchiha's overwhelming numbers. Both armies clashed, with the Otsutsuki cutting down multiple shinobi before being forced to fight multiple warriors at the same time. This was due to the constant stream of Uchiha warriors running across the single bridge. Pulling his blade from an Uchiha member, Hoshi quickly kicked one member away before slicing it a second. Around him, the shouts of warriors and sound of metal hitting metal was heard clearly. This was war. Leaning his head to the side, he dodged a slash before thrusting out with an open palm to the chest. The Uchiha in question collapsed to the ground, his body limp. Hoshi-sama. Looking to his left, he saw a young Kagaya running towards him. His bones cutting through two shinobi before coming to a stop beside him. We need to somehow further limit the amount of troops they are getting across the bridge. Looking over in the direction, he saw a few Hitaki and Kurama clan members trying to fight off the amount of Uchihas getting across, but were getting overwhelmed. That wasn't all. Some Uchiha were using others as leverage to jump across the gap. Killing a few more Uchiha, he turned to face the young Kagaya. Get word to Guan. He is in charge of this mission and so has the largest authority over what happens. Rakan, Yik'll go to Guan and ask what we shall do about the Uchiha jumping across the gap. The two men in question nodded their heads and began running back towards the forest. Otsutsuki rise. War on all fronts. Guan nodded his head in understanding. The Uchiha were quite smart. We shall destroy the bridge. Turning to the 500 men behind him, he drew his battle axe and allowed bones to sprout from his forearms. Alright lads, let's show the Uchiha the power of the Otsutsuki clan. Charge! With a roar, he and his men charged forward and engaged the Uchiha army alongside Hoshi. Otsutsuki rise. War on all fronts. Naruto once again found himself staring at the map before him. The Otsutsuki capital stronghold was designed personally by him so that it could be incredibly easy to defend against a sizable force with only a small amount of troops. Currently he had only 100 warriors to defend his stronghold. Beside the map were two scrolls. One from Guan, the other from Guro. Guan had currently engaged the enemy forces and had been forced to destroy the bridge. The enemy had lost over half their forces within the last couple of days, while he had lost just under half. Now there had only been a few skirmishes with each army positioned on either side of the bridge. Guro had, however, not seen any actions. His force of 1,000 troops, still currently guarding the canyon. The army of 800 Senju was still positioned at their border outpost. Naruto had recently sent word to Guro to transfer 100 troops to the southwest front to help compensate for the gap in numbers. Naruto seemed perfectly calm over the war. Like he knew the outcome before it began. That was far from the truth. He was in fact nervous, though his outward appearance belayed no nervousness. The reason for his nervousness was due to him underestimating Madara. The man had proven himself to be quite deceitful. He had been led to believe during the few meetings he had with the man that he was short-tempered and hot-headed. The man, however, had hidden behind that mask and fooled him. It was because of that he was angry at himself and nervous at the same time. Zetsu had recently reported that Madara had created a secret alliance with Toshiro, leader of a megacure. Not even Hashirama knew of this alliance, but that wasn't the only reason he was nervous. No, it was the large army coming from the west straight towards the capital. 5,000 strong. It was a predicament that was incredibly difficult to solve without revealing some of his trump cards. If he tried to remove men from the Senju campaign, they would overwhelm his remaining forces with their skill. If he tried to remove some of his men from the Uchiha campaign, they wouldn't be able to hold off the sheer number of the Uchiha armies. The Zetsu army was an option, however that would greatly lower the amount of men he had in that army and also would take away the element of surprise. There was only one option. Madara has brought his cards to the table, it was time he brought his. With a devilish smirk he stood from his seat and began preparing for the battle to come. Otsutsuki rise. War on all fronts. Explosions were heard as multiple jutsus clashed against. Kunai were whizzing over the gap and impacting small mud walls, sometimes the heads of soldiers. From the tree line Hoshi stood, his hand resting on the tree. Guan a couple of meters away pacing backwards and forwards, while he gripped a scroll in his hand tightly. Behind them multiple medical tents were set up and the medics were caring for the injured before they were moved to the front lines once more. They had come prepared for a skirmish, unlike the Uchiha. While they had brought enough supplies, weapons and medical tents for the wounded. The Uchiha had only brought weapons and supplies that would last a couple of weeks. Now when someone was injured on their side, they had to send them back to the nearest outpost, which was a couple of clicks back. The only reason they had managed to uphold the skirmish was due to the overwhelming numbers they brought with them. Guan, stop this. You're making me nervous. Hoshi snapped while rubbing his temples. You should be. Guan shouted back. A megacure who he had signed a peace treaty with have sent an army of 5,000 to destroy the capital. Naruto-sama is there. He will not allow any harm to come to the people residing there. Hoshi said, if it would make you feel better, I will take 100 men and help lift the siege of the capital. Guan sighed lowly. We can't afford to lose extra troops. We are barely holding off the Uchiha army as it is with the troops we have. Guan said. Naruto-sama is strong, I admit that. Even if I've never seen him fight, he exudes an aura of power and confidence. But even he can't fight off an army of 5,000 with only 100 men. Hoshi spoke. And what difference will another 100 men do? The best thing we can do is hold out against the Uchiha and hope that Naruto-sama can hold off against them. Well, an extra 100 men added to the defense will increase the chance of victory. Especially the way the capital is designed. Hoshi's voice had increased volume. Guan stared at him before once again sighing, his shoulders loosening. Very well, but once the siege is over you are to get back here as soon as possible. Nodding his head, Hoshi ran down to the front lines to collect the troops needed. Otsutsuki rise. War on all fronts. Tobirama-sama, the Otsutsuki defenders have moved another 100 men. Spoke a Senju warrior to the brother of Hashirama Senju. The man in question turned to face the young man. What is their intended target? We believe the capital, sir. Nodding his head, Tobirama stood up from his chair. Prepare the troops, we are to engage the Otsutsuki army. Sir, the Otsutsuki have the advantage of an ambush. We will lose hundreds of men, exclaimed the messenger. I know. Our objective is for a small squadron of our troops to get past the enemy lines and assist the Uchihas in the south. If we do break through, secure the area. The stern voice in which Tobirama spoke caused the man to bow lowly and leave the room. Otsutsuki rise. War on all fronts. Naruto stood on top of one of the many towers, his battle kimono waving loosely in the wind. Behind him stood 100 troops, each ready to die for their belief in him. You dare attack my home? Naruto roared in anger. For your insolence you can suffer the wrath of my family. Naruto leapt off the tower and landed in front of the open gates. Biting his thumb, he ran it over the kanji for Biju, then ran through some hand seals. Summoning jutsu. A large ceiling array spread out across the land, and a cloud of smoke so tall that it could be seen for miles around rose up into the sky. On that day the world remembered why they feared the Otsutsuki clan's power. Otsutsuki rise. War on all fronts. Hoshi stood frozen just like the men behind him as they stared up in fearful awe at what was before them. Many shinobi behind them dropped their weapons in shock, causing the sound of metal hitting the floor was heard clearly as day in the silent forest. So shocking was the sight, even the wildlife could do nothing but stare. Then all hell broke loose. Birds cawed and flew in the opposite direction of the colossal figure. Double time, men! Hoshi shouted and quickly increased his speed. He feared for what would greet him when he got to his intended destination. For if the enemy summoned that beast, then there was no hope at all. They just had to pray that it wasn't. Otsutsuki rise. War on all fronts. Madara stood overlooking the southern campaign. He was honestly disgusted with how incompetent his soldiers were, but now he had a chance to prove the power of the Uchiha. For on the other side the sound of fighting was heard. Susanoo. This was the power granted to him by his beloved little brother before he died. This was the true power of the Uchiha. A large, blue, humanoid figure burst from his body and towered over the battleground. With one mighty step he easily reached the other side and began the fight once more. With renewed vigor the Uchiha army charged forward. When a person dies, it can have a large effect on those around him. Loved ones and friends each will feel a rush of emotions. Pain, sorrow, emptiness. But most of all hatred, pure unrelenting hatred. That hatred can be molded to create warriors with a vengeance and bloodlust that cannot be stopped. It also makes them completely loyal and easy to control. True warriors. Otsutsuki rise. Otsutsuki's power. Summoning jutsu. A large ceiling array spread out across the land, and a cloud of smoke so tall that it could be seen for miles around rose up into the sky. A screeching roar caused the smokescreen to envelope the area and then disappear. With this it revealed the very beast many had heard in legend. One of the 9 Biju, the strongest of them, the Kyuubi no Yoko. It was told in tale that the beast was being of pure destruction and chaos. A mindless beast incapable of thinking a simple thought. To see it summoned on the side of the enemy was jaw-dropping. Kurama. These fools believe they can destroy our family. Let's show them how foolish they are. With a roar the beast reared his head back and allowed its tails to converge on a single point above its mouth. From around the air blue and red balls of energy formed into one large purple ball of condensed Bijudama. With a roar, the technique was launched to the back of the army and expanded outwards. The resounding shockwave caused the very ground to shake. The amount of power behind the technique caused the once large army of 5,000 to be reduced to 3,000. 2,000 dead with a single technique. This goes as a testament to the power the Biju hold. Burn in the flames of hell. Amaterasu. From his eyes came flames as black as night and engulfed the bodies of multiple shinobi. Many screamed out in pain as their bodies were slowly burned. Other shinobi tried to help their dying comrades only for them to also get attacked by the flames. Inferno style. Flame control. Closing his left eye, he began moving the flames to allow a large gap to form in front of the gate. Drawing his sword, he ran forwards and cut through multiple shinobi before he began dodging multiple strikes. The Kyuubi soon joined the fray and began stampeding through the army, his giant paws flattening multiple bodies. Seeing the fight going on before them, those guards that were left to guard the capital charged forward through the gap and joined their leader in the battle. Leaning his head back, Naruto dodged a kunai that was mere inches away from slicing open his neck. Raising his right hand, he blocked a roundhouse kick meant for his face and followed up with a jab to the man's face with his sword-wielding hand. The man tumbled backwards before furiously slashing at Naruto, who simply parried the kunai's slashes with his sword. The shinobi went for a stab, however Naruto stepped to the side, causing the man to go off balance, leaving him completely open. Raising his blade, he quickly brought it down upon the man, causing him to collapse to the ground with his head missing. Smirking, he turned to face the man behind him. He wore blue armor and dark blonde hair. Blue eyes shined with anger. "I'm sorry, Toshiro, did that man mean something to you? Was he lover, a brother, a friend?" Naruto gasped in fake shock while looking from the dead body to the now named Toshiro. "No, of course he's your son." Toshiro grinded his teeth together in anger. "You should be thankful that I gave him a quick death. You, on the other hand, will be forced to suffer." Stabbing his sword into the ground, Naruto allowed chakra to coat his hands and feet. "Maybe I should have let him live so that I could torture him right before your eyes. Shame, it would be fun turning him into a mindless drone that would follow my every word." With a roar, Toshiro charged forward, his anger blinding him from any rational thought, and simply struck out on pure instinct. His closed fist closed in on Naruto's face, however he ducked under Naruto's punch and followed up with an uppercut to the chin. At the same time his fist struck, he released all the chakra in his fist. This caused the strength to increase greatly, and with a cry of pain, Toshiro was sent flying backwards before he ricocheted off the ground. Coming to a stop, Toshiro pulled himself to his feet, holding his jaw in his hand. What mad strength! He cannot be human. Looking at Naruto, he saw his right arm completely covered in flames and his left in wind. Behind were the signs of battle. Spears clashing against swords and jutsus flying around in all directions. Amazing, I haven't had a human to practice that move on. Only training dummies, and they all shattered into splinters. Growling in anger, Toshiro charged forwards once more. "I'll kill you," he roared. Smirking, Naruto parried the strike with his flaming hand, causing burns to form on Toshiro's wrists. His left hand swiped upwards and Toshiro stumbled backwards before blood splattered out from a cut going vertically up from his left hip to his shoulder. Lifting his leg up, he lashed out with front kick that slammed into his chest. Falling to his knees, he spat out some blood before performing an uppercut. Naruto, however, grabbed the fist and squeezed it tightly. The flames burned slowly away at the flesh on his hand until only bone remained. Naruto allowed the wind in his left hand to disappear and be replaced by lightning. Gripping Toshiro's neck tightly, he lifted the man off the ground. Toshiro, as soon as he felt the hand constricting around his neck and the lightning coursing through it, caused so much pain he almost fell unconscious straight away. His hatred for the man was the only thing that kept him awake. The great Toshiro, believed to be one of the strongest men in the elemental nations beside Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha, brought down by a simple Otsutsuki clan head. To be fair, you were clouded by your anger, but I expected more of a challenge from you. How disappointing. Shaking his head, Naruto turned to look at the ground. The sound of a roar of multiple men made him turn to face the direction of the sound. It was Hoshi along with multiple over-shinobi charging into the battlefield while mowing down the unsuspecting troops of the Omegakure army. "Look around you, Toshiro. Your army is defeated. You're defeated." He indicated to the surrounding battlefield with his free hand. The Kyuubi has killed over half your men, while the rest are slowly been captured or killed by own men. You have no reinforcements while mine have arrived. You know I planned on torturing you for the information you have, but I have a better idea." Naruto's eyes once more became bloodshot as chakra built up. Tsukuyomi. All of Toshiro's struggles became non-existent as he hung limp in Naruto's hand. His eyes were clouded over and his breathing was slow. Releasing him from his grasp, he allowed the body to crumple to the ground. Otsutsuki rise. Otsutsuki's power. Looking from the multiple scrolls on his table to the messenger and back to the scrolls again, Naruto sighed and rubbed his temples. Already the war was causing him much stress, and if his cells didn't regenerate at the exceptional level as they did, he was sure that wrinkles would already be forming on his handsome features. Currently in the north, Guro and Hachiro were engaging Tobirama and his army in the canyon and had been for the past 3 hours, however were slowly losing. Especially when the 100 troops that were moved here weren't there to help. Currently 200 troops, including those that originally left the campaign. "So you're saying that Madara arrived at the southern borders and destroyed our armies?" The man nodded, his head, sadness creeping into his eyes, but there was hatred shining in his eyes when he said, "Madara." "Yes, sir." He pulled a scroll from his kunai pouch and handed it to him. "Madara told me to give this to you before he left." Taking the scroll, he opened at it and read the contents. "Otsutsuki Naruto, you will regret the day you insulted me and my clan. I know perfectly well that you were the one to capture the Hyuga heir and your real aim was to stop Konoha from being built. As you have no doubt heard from the little messenger that I left alive, that your army in the south is eliminated. Defeat is all but imminent for you, and I can't wait for the day that I dance upon your corpse. Until then I am content to watch you scheme and struggle to hold my armies. For now though, you might want to look at the gift I have left you. Enjoy." Underneath the last word was a storage seal. Placing his hand upon it, he channeled chakra into it, and in a cloud of smoke the contents of the storage was revealed. With a roar of rage, Naruto swiped multiple scrolls into the wall and slammed his fist into the wall, causing spider web cracks to form. Killing intent burst from his body, so large and potent that it caused the messenger to form a cold sweat and his body tremble in fear. "Yes, sir. Leave," he shouted. The man quickly rushed out of the room, far away from his angered master. The cause of this anger was the decapitated head of Guan. "Zetsu, what do you need, Naruto?" asked Zetsu calmly, even in the face of Naruto's rage. "Prepare the Zetsu army. We will eliminate the Uchiha and Senju armies in one swoop." Turning around, he began moving to his private quarters. He passed multiple shinobi and servants who bowed deeply. Upon entering his quarters, he walked up to a small stand which was covered in midnight black samurai armor. The armor was specially made by his oldest brother Hagoromo as a gift to his mother, however she was sealed away before he could give it to her. It was exactly like Guan's, with the back and under the arms left open. The shoulder guards were made of the overlapping metal only produced by the Rinnegan, Samsara Eye. The armor was light, however it was stronger than any metal in the land and so offered maximum protection. Placing it on him, he leaned down and grabbed a single sword before placing it on his back. The sword was a single dao blade. To finish off his outfit, he had his usual katana strapped to his waist. Otsutsuki rise. Otsutsuki's power. Hachiro and Guro stood back to back. They both had multiple bodies surrounding them. Some belonged to the Senju clan, others belonged to the Otsutsuki clan. Tattered flags belonging to both clans stuck up from the ground. The canyon had proved to be an excellent field advantage, however with Tobirama's Hiraishin, flying thunder god technique, it had proved to be impossible to hold, and so they engaged in combat. That seemed to be what Tobirama wanted, as multiple shinobi managed to sneak through their defense. It at first looked like they were going to win, even with Tobirama killing hundreds. Then the shinobi that slipped through returned and once again turned the tide of the battle. Tobirama flashed in front of Hachiro and performed a mid-air roundhouse kick that impacted against his face. Tumbling to the ground, Hachiro fell onto his hands and knees. Guro landed beside him. Even with Goro's Sharingan, Copy Wheel Eye, they were defenseless against this man. This only solidified the fact that Hashirama wasn't the only strong shinobi in the Senju army. It was in that moment everything changed. The moment when Guro and Hachiro, the leaders of the Senju campaign, were defeated by a single man. In that moment the very ground shook and the sound of 1,000 feet moving towards this area was heard. All heads turned to find thousands of pale creatures stood on the canyon top. Tobirama, surrender or die. The calm and demanding voice of Hoshi sounded down the canyon. Tobirama turned to the end of the canyon that headed for the Otsutsuki capital. There stood Hoshi in front of over 300 Otsutsuki clan members. Sighing, Tobirama turned to face the afraid faces of his own soldiers. He had no doubt in his mind that many of them would not escape alive. He watched as Guro and Hachiro moved around to cut off his escape. Retreat, he said calmly, and in a mad rush his men turned around and ran. He gathered the need chakra to escape, but Guro quickly gripped his neck tightly. Picking him off his feet, he slammed Tobirama into the ground. From the ground on the Senju side, hundreds of the white figures rose up, each holding naginata. Some of the Senju were unable to stop themselves before running straight into the blade, while others stopped inches away from killing themselves. Walking forwards, Hoshi looked at the downed form of Tobirama. Turning to Guro, he nodded his head and walked away. Guro lifted the unconscious form of Tobirama and swung him over his shoulder before following after Hoshi. Behind them, multiple Senju warriors numbering around 300 were being rounded up by the Zetsu cones, with Hachiro watching over the proceedings. Otsutsuki rise. Otsutsuki's power. Naruto overlooked the area where Guan had once led an army to hold off the Uchiha once stood. Now the land was smoking with large craters and thousands of dead bodies. Standing there, he looked around. Behind him stood 10,000 white Zetsus. Only a tenth of the original army, another tenth, had been sent with Hoshi. Beside him stood Toshiro with what was left of the army he had brought with him. Both were overlooking the Uchiha camp that was situated on the other end of the ravine. A large bridge of earth had been built from an earth jutsu, no doubt built for easy access across the river. This would prove to be the Uchiha's downfall. Destroy them quickly and quietly, he said to Toshiro, who nodded his head in understanding. Madara Uchiha is mine. Is that understood? Yes, Naruto-sama. Turning back once more, he allowed his Sharingan, Copy Wheel Eye, to form the Mangekyo Sharingan, Kaleidoscope Copy Wheel Eye. Drawing his Dao sword from his back, he placed both hands on it. Pulling both hands away from each other, the blade also split into two. Know thyself, know thy enemy. 1,000 battles, 1,000 victories. Sun Tzu. It means that if you know yourself and your enemy, you will always succeed. If you know your weaknesses, you can improve. If you know your enemy's weaknesses, you can exploit it. Otsutsuki rise. Battle of the Gods. Crouching low, Naruto moved quickly through the darkness. He had long since passed over the bridge and was now moving towards the camp under the cover of darkness. On the over end of the bridge, his army waited for his signal. His Sharingan, Copy Wheel Eye, was out, allowing him to track and predict the movements of all the guards on watch, and so knew exactly how to get inside. The camp itself was quite small, meaning the Uchiha army had lost a large amount of their men against Guan and his army. That at least meant that Guan's death wasn't in vain. The last two things needed to do to fully make sure that Guan did not die for nothing was to wipe out Madara Uchiha and his army. Make sure his dream of an Otsutsuki empire that stretched to all ends of the elemental nations and beyond. He could still remember the dream that Guan had when he was younger and how he changed it just to appease him. It was a memorable memory that only brought great pain to him. Flashback. Moving through the misty forests of Kiri were two figures. One was undoubtedly Naruto Otsutsuki, while the other was a young Guan. Naruto walked quickly and elegantly, almost as if he was walking air. Guan, however, was having to jog lightly just to keep up with Naruto. Naruto-sama? He hummed lightly so that Guan knew he was listening. Well, I was wondering what your dream was. Looking down at Guan, Naruto carried on walking. My dream is to escape the shadow cast upon me by my two brothers, nephews, and my mother. My dream is to make sure that the Otsutsuki clan are the greatest clan to ever live, even after my death. Naruto spoke with full conviction. What is your dream? Guan seemed to be delighted to be asked that question. My dream is to create a world of peace where children are not forced to fight in wars, he said. Smiling, Guan continued, but I will help you complete yours before I do mine. I look forward to that day, Guan. Flashback end. The thought brought a bitter smile as he was forced to remember the fact that the man he saw as his one true friend The only man could he trust was gone, and all because of a power-hungry clan head. A clan head he planned to destroy even if it cost him his life. Moving quickly, he ran up to the gate and pressed his back against the wall. Above him a guard stood, his eyes looking out in the blackness of night. Channeling chakra into his legs, he released it all in one go and leapt into the air. Leaning backwards, his body moved over the head of the guard to the point their hair was only apart by a few inches. It was in that moment Naruto's arms lashed out and snapped the guard's neck. Landing in a crouch position, he moved around, dispatching multiple guards surrounding the gate before opening the gate itself. With stage 1 set, he moved on to stage 2. Pulling out multiple kunai laced with exploding tags, he released them with pristine precision. Each towards the multiple tents holding some remaining troops from the Uchiha army. A sizzling sound was heard before multiple explosions rocked the camp. Smirking Naruto heard the sound of a battle cry from 1,000 men strong. Truly a terrifying sound. Otsutsuki rise. Battle of the gods. Hashirama, a peace-loving man and well-liked individual. He could inspire thousands with his kind-hearted nature. It was because of his nature he set out to create peace in the land of fire. That plan had failed because of, well, he couldn't blame Naruto as he had no proof that the man did it. But all the proof pointed at Madara and he refused to blame his best friend. Currently he was walking towards Madara's camp. While had not taken an active role in the war, he had been doing something just as important. He had recently procured a full military alliance with the Yamanaka, Nara and Akamichi clans, and now they were preparing to march against the Otsutsuki clan. Now he and the armies of the Yamanaka, Akamichi and Nara clans were marching to help Madara in his campaign and quickly blitzkrieg his way through the Otsutsuki clan territory. Hashirama-sama. Turning to face the messenger, he nodded his head for him to continue. Tobirama-sama was defeated in combat and what's left of his army has been rounded up. The fate of Tobirama-sama is currently unknown, however we have reasons to believe he is still alive. Hashirama's fist tightened to the point they visibly became white. Killing intent also burst from his body and caused the shinobi around him to gasp for air. Around him multiple shinobi were beginning to doubt the Senju Uchiha power. It was no secret that most of the Uchiha army, consisting of 1,800 men, had nearly been defeated by a simple 1,000 men. Even with the help of Madara Uchiha, lots more Uchiha men died. Also, the Senju clan had the unbeatable duo Hashirama and Tobirama. Hashirama would encourage those around him to take up arms, while Tobirama would create brilliant strategies to win the day. With one of the duo either captured or dead, doubt was beginning to take place. There is more, sir. Loosening his grip, he also lessened his killing intent, allowing those around him to take a deep breath to calm their erratic breathing. Forgive me. Now carry on. Well, it seems Naruto Otsutsuki has defeated the army of 5,000 troops sent from Rain, led by Toshiro with the help of the Kyuubi, which was summoned by Naruto himself. Now Naruto is leading an army of 5,000 strong, including the 2,000 remains of the army from Rain towards the Uchiha camp. Hashirama gaped in shock. 7,000 men. How did he conjure up an army so great without us realizing? Turning to face the men behind him, he began speaking quickly to the Uchiha camp. With a shout of agreement, they began running towards the direction of the Uchiha camp. Otsutsuki rise. Battle of the gods. Naruto stood facing the very person he hated most. Around them the sound of the Uchiha trying desperately to fight against the invaders was heard. However, they were losing badly. For every one of the creatures they killed, hundreds more would take its place. His armor was on, but underneath was a tight-fitting, black, battle outfit. Madara stood across from him, a scowl fixed firmly on his face indicating he was displeased by the occurring events. He wore his usual battle armor with his gunbai strapped to his back. His arms were crossed tightly over his chest. Madara, Naruto said calmly, his voice completely devoid of emotion. Naruto. Madara replied in an equally emotionless voice. I've waited for this moment ever since you humiliated me in Konoha. Now I'm going to destroy you. His voice changed towards the end to one of insane bloodlust. At the same time he allowed his Sharingan to form the Mangekyo Sharingan, kaleidoscope copy wheel eye, and drew his gunbai from his back. He took a stance with both his legs spread apart and crouched. His gunbai positioned so the flat side of it protected his front. You have it the wrong way round, Madara. He drew his Dao blade and his katana blade. The stance he took was square on with his Dao blade flicked to the side and his katana pointing directly at Madara. His Mangekyo Sharingan, Kaleidoscope Copy Wheel Eye, was also activated. I shall destroy you. A wind blew past them causing dust and fallen leaves to move in the gap around them. A single leaf moved so that it stopped the other from seeing the other's eyes. It was in that moment the two titans clashed. The genius and the god. Bringing his blades over his head he slammed it down. Madara however, swung the blades up knocking Naruto off balance. Naruto however went with the momentum and back flipped into the air. Skidding across the ground he shot forward with his Dao blade scrapping across the ground. Madara seemed surprised by the speed shown by Naruto, while his Sharingan, Copy Wheel Eye, tracked it easily. His body however was not fast enough to react and so was forced to watch as wind chakra coated the blade. Swinging his Dao blade up it cut through his armor and only just pierced his skin. He following up with a front kick to Madara's chest, which sent him skidding across the ground. "You're nothing like I thought you was," Madara said. "Oh, and what did you think I was?" Naruto asked while he and Madara circled each other. The battle around them forgotten. A man who had overs fight their battles and hid behind their money. A man who couldn't fight to save their lives. Well then you'll be sorely disappointed because I have much more to give. With that fire coated his blades, followed by lightning on his Dao and wind coated his katana causing the flames to intensify. Shall we continue? Yes, let's continue this little dance. Both warriors charged forward and engaged in a furious battle. Naruto performed swipe after swipe, but Madara expertly blocked each one with his gunbai. Spinning around Madara allowed his gunbai to swing round and hit Naruto. It however, only hit air as Naruto jumped over it. Using this Naruto spun round and lashed out with a spinning hook kick. The heel collided with the side of Madara's face and sent his face to the side. Landing on the ground Naruto brought his katana over his head in an attempt to cut Madara in half. The man however, once again used his gunbai to knock Naruto off balance. The katana was knocked cleanly out of his hand and sent flying through the air while he tumbled backwards. Madara did not let up and followed up with a brutal combat. A spinning side kick, uppercut, downward elbow followed by a spinning back kick. To finish it off he formed a single hand seal. Fire style. Great Fireball Jutsu. From his mouth a large fireball rushed forwards and engulfed Naruto's body in its flames. Like I said, I will destroy you. Turning around he faced the multiple warriors engaging his forces. In that moment pain coursed through his body. All because he was arrogant. Madara bounced across the floor a few times before skidding to a halt. You really are arrogant. Getting to his feet he stumbled before regaining his footing. Turning around he faced Naruto to see him perfectly fine. Only a few scruffs. Did you ever learn to never turn your back on your enemy? Walking forwards Naruto allowed chakra to flood into his eyes. This caused a white skeletal figure to form around him. It was only a simple ribcage with 2 arms. Just die. Susanoo. A large blue figure fit completely with samurai armor and a blade strapped to his hip surrounded his body. Summoning Jutsu. Once again Naruto summoned the great Kyuubi no Yoko, Kurama. Stood on top of the beast's head, Naruto allowed a smirk to cross his features. You honestly believe that you can defeat me? Naruto Otsutsuki, how foolish you are. Susanoo. Naruto roared and with it Kurama was fitted in samurai outfit. Lifting its hand Naruto channeled chakra and with it a large, white Dao blade took shape. Bringing it down the Kyuubi placed both its hand on the hilt and pulled apart. With it the single blade became 2. What? Madara stuttered out in shocked horror. Didn't you know that the Susanoo envelops every living thing in its power? Including the Kyuubi. His eyes locked onto Madara's fear-filled eyes. Now die. Raising his double blades he went to bring them down until a wooden fist impacted against the side of his Susanoo Kyuubi's face. The strength caused the blades to slam against the ground killing many Uchiha and Zetsus, yet that wasn't all, the figure was sent flying through the air before skidding against the ground. It was in that moment both armies fled, except the 3 warriors. Hashirama on top of a wooden golem. Madara inside a blue spectral samurai. Naruto inside a white pentagon crystal positioned on the forehead of the Kyuubi, which was covered in white samurai armor. This would be a battle between gods in human form. A battle that would reshape the very ground they fought. Otsutsuki Rise. Outcome. A large explosion rocked the ground as the two legendary warriors defended against a single enemy. Naruto Otsutsuki, the clan head of the Otsutsuki clan. With the help of his Susanoo Kyuubi, Naruto was able to defeat Madara, but before he could finish him off, another warrior appeared, Hashirama Senju, and now the three warriors had clashed, starting a battle that would echo through the centuries. Charging forwards, the Kyuubi brought its Dao blades down on Hashirama and Madara. One for each. Hashirama's wooden golem went onto one knee and caught the blade in its hands, which were now in a prey-like position. Madara, however, raised his Susanoo's katana and blocked the white Dao blade. The resulting explosion caused a shockwave so great that those within a 70-mile radius were picked off their feet due to the gale force winds. Those within a 20-mile radius were killed instantly. Even the wildlife was destroyed as trees were uprooted and the ground cratered. Hashirama gripped the sword tightly with his left hand and used his free hand to punch the Susanoo Kyuubi in the chest. He slid back against the ground, and when he came to a stop he saw Hashirama and Madara charging towards him. Together they would be able to defeat him easily, so he needed to separate them. Lightning style. Zeus's rain. From the sky multiple thunderbolts fell down and struck the ground around Hashirama, causing the man to stop in his tracks or face his golem being destroyed. If that happened, he'd have to use chakra to recreate the wooden construct. Madara stopped to look at Hashirama, and that cost him. For Naruto had the Kyuubi close the distance faster than he expected. The Kyuubi swung his Dao blades in quick precise succession, one after the other. Madara blocked some of them, however multiple breached his defense and impacted against his armor. Cracks were beginning to form in his Susanoo's defense. He was saved, however, when Hashirama's wooden golem tackled the Kyuubi to the ground. Its tails wrapped around both the wooden golem and the Susanoo. With a quick tug, the wooden golem and the Susanoo fell to the ground. Getting to its feet, the Kyuubi channeled chakra into the space above its mouth, and just as he was about to release the Bijudama, tailed beast bomb, it exploded. This was because Hashirama's golem had gotten to its feet and gripped the ball of compressed energy and shoved it back into the Kyuubi's. This explosion engulfed all warriors in a beam of pure light and sound, before everything went silent. From the beam's epicenter, the three warriors were plummeting to the ground. The armor they wore was all but gone, and there was only a few bits of armor remaining, along with the tight-fitting, black, battle outfit that was also in rags. For what seemed like hours, the three men remained on the ground, regaining enough to carry on fighting. The explosion had done more damage than any had thought. Naruto, due to his excellent healing, managed to get to his feet the quickest, with Hashirama not far behind him. Naruto looked towards his enemies to see both of them standing on wobbly legs. They, however, were not as worse for wears as him due to him being at the center of the explosion. The two warriors moved quickly and engaged Naruto. Hashirama struck with a left hook, which Naruto managed to block. Madara followed Hashirama's lead and lashed out with a roundhouse kick to Naruto's midriff, which was also blocked. Madara used his free hand and attacked with a jab to the stomach. To block this, Naruto raised out of his knees. Hashirama spun around and hit Naruto in the side of the face with a hook kick to the face, which sent him stumbling backwards. Madara followed up with multiple punches, which further forced Naruto backwards. Then, just as Naruto got a rest, Hashirama appeared over Madara and performed multiple combos onto him. Both then did a spinning sidekick to Naruto's chest, sending him to the floor. "Naruto, you've been beaten. Just surrender," Hashirama said. "No, Hashirama, we should kill him now," Madara seethed. Naruto, however, just laid there bloody and beaten, but on his face was a smug smirk. "What are you smirking at? You've been beaten. Fools." That single word made Madara's hatred of the man grow, and even Hashirama was getting a little annoyed at the man's dismissal of them. "The both of you. And how are we fools?" asked Madara. "You believe you've beaten me?" "Me?" he exclaimed before laughing manically. Naruto started getting to his feet slowly. "I'm a member of the Otsutsuki clan. The greatest clan to ever live. We've been around since before the time of chakra." That seemed to shock both Madara and Hashirama. Stumbling, Naruto managed to stand, albeit shakily. "My mother ate the Shinju fruit that gave birth to chakra. My older brothers defeated the Jubi, 10 tails, and sealed it away along with my mother." One of them became known as the Rikudo Sennin, the Sage of Six Paths. My nephew Indra Otsutsuki created the Uchiha clan. My other nephew Ashura Otsutsuki created the Senju clan. He roared, further shocking Madara and Hashirama. If your family is so great, why are you so weak? Asked Hashirama. My power, it's like a bijou-tailed beast. It's potent and vast. I can currently only use a quarter of my power without killing me. It can sometimes be like a double-edged sword. Sometimes my body will adapt and sometimes it will reject my power. Power burst from his body. To Madara and Hashirama it was greater than anything they had ever felt before. It was more potent than the Kyuubi's. What was most shocking was the change his body underwent. His body grew in size before muscles bulged everywhere to the point he resembled a bodybuilder. The muscles then compacted greatly and were only slightly bigger than before. His nails and toenails lengthened into claws and talons. Canines lengthened into fangs and his hair grew longer and spikier. What changed the most was his eyes. From the original Sharingan, copy wheel eye, to that of purple with a multiple black rings going out from the pupil. Clenching his hands, Naruto looked down at his body. Then a smirk of confidence marred his features. I'd say you're in luck, but that'd be lying because unluckily for you I seem to be having a good day. So let's see what my new power can do, shall we? Without waiting for an answer his hands detached themselves revealing a metal structure. From it multiple rounded cylinders extended outwards and flew towards Madara and Hashirama. The two only just managed to dodge the multiple objects, but were still caught in the resulting explosion. Skidding across the ground both warriors came to a stop. Slamming his hands on the ground two rhinos each with the Rinnegan's Samsara Eye, Animal Path. The rhinos charged forward and the two warriors charged forwards to intercept them. Wood style. Wood dragon jutsu. Slamming his hands on the ground a massive dragon made entirely of wood flew upwards. Hashirama stood on top of its head and as it passed through the middle of them Hashirama jumped off and began running towards Naruto. The dragon itself moved in a way so that it formed a figure of 8, with one rhino inside each loop. Susanoo. Creating the full-bodied Susanoo, Madara drew its sword and cut the head off each rhino causing it to go up in an explosion of smoke. Hashirama lashed out with multiple punches that Naruto blocked easily, before gripping the man's neck. Shocking sounds were heard as Naruto closed Hashirama's windpipe. Madara upon seeing his friend in trouble swung his blade down onto Naruto's head. Naruto simply caught the massive blade in his hand much to the shock of both Hashirama and Madara. Their shock increased when all the chakra powering the technique was sucked into the body of Naruto. As Madara began his descent to the ground Naruto held out his free hand. Bansho Tennen, Universal Pull. After the name of the attack Madara went flying straight into the hand of Naruto. His neck colliding with the outstretched hand and nearly killing him. Now that we're all here I don't have to shout. He sighed and looked from Madara to Hashirama. Hashirama, I don't want to kill you. So I'm going to make you an offer, join me or your brother dies. He looked at Hashirama once more before turning to Madara who had been struggling to get free. As for you, I intend to crush you completely, but not why. Coughing Naruto stumbled backwards allowing Madara and Hashirama to fall to the ground. You, Naruto roared in outrage. I see you've made your choice. Now rest in peace knowing you are the cause of your brother's death. Almighty push. From his body chakra burst out and the ground around him was torn asunder. A crater 50 meters deep and 50 meters wide was created within a matter of seconds. Hashirama and Madara were sent flying backwards. Universal pull. Outstretching his hand Hashirama and Madara once again came flying towards him. Channeling chakra into his right hand he released it all on impact against Madara's face sending him flying backwards. Hashirama however had his neck gripped tightly. Lifting him up into the air, he slammed him down into the ground before creating multiple chakra suppression rods and stabbed them into multiple key points that would stop mobility. Turning to face Madara he allowed a small black ball to escape his hands and go into the sky. I said I'd crush you Madara and I intend to do that. Planetary devastation. Debris came up from the ground including the area Madara was on. As the debris came in contact with the black ball it resembled a circle, like a meteor or a miniature moon. It then started compressing to the point blood began seeping out of the cracks. Smirking Naruto turned to face Madara. You made the wrong choice, Hashirama Senju, and for that you will pay. Leaning down, he gripped the underside of Hashirama's head, while his free hand gripped the top. Human path. With that he pulled his hand away, and with it the ghostly image of Hashirama's spirit was with it. Before that though, he learned everything he did. All his memories, all his secrets, all his techniques, everything. Looking to the left he saw the Uchiha army staring out in shock at Naruto. Turning to the right he saw his army stood there, with Toshiro moving towards him. Take the body to the capital. Also send word to Guro. He is to lead the campaign through the Uchiha territory. All of it is to be under the Otsutsuki rule before the day is up. Hoshi is to make sure that all of the Senju territories are under our rule. Any resistance is to be eliminated. Not that there should be, but just in case. Nodding his head, Toshiro turned around and made his way back to the capital, where he would proceed to rest. While his body had adapted to his influx of power, it needed to rest to fully adapt. If he didn't, it would begin rejecting him. This was because the more he used it, the more likely it would reject him. Luckily he had managed to end the fight quickly. With Hashirama cells my body should be able to handle all of my power, if not most of it. I need Zetsu to look into it. That was his last thought before he collapsed to his knees. Darkness consuming his vision. The last thing he heard was his loyal servant Toshiro shouting his name out in shock. Otsutsuki rise. 3 years. This is my answer, Hanzo said before drawing his kusarigama and decapitating the messenger from the Otsutsuki clan. With that Hanzo turned to one of the shinobi in the room. Put his head inside a scroll and have it sent to my uncle and his new master. Sir, what of the body and the Byakugan, all-seeing white eye? We will keep them, however it is to be made aware that if they want them back. I ask that the remaining 2,000 men that survived the attack against Otsutsuki capital 3 years are to be returned to a megacure. Bowing lowly the guard left the room. Otsutsuki rise. 3 years. 3 years. That's how long it had been since Naruto had single-headedly defeated both Madara and Hashirama. Now he was the newly dubbed Shinobi no Kami, god of shinobi, and while he wasn't as powerful Hamura, Hagoromo or Kagaya, he was more powerful than his nephews, as it should be. His power ever since then had carried on growing as more and more of it became usable for him. It seems that when he could use half of it safely, the remaining half was much easier to be integrated into the body. Hashirama's cells also helped with the process. In these 3 years many things happened, such as the entirety of the land of fire and tea belonging to the Otsutsuki clan. After that, peace had reigned amongst the land except for the sightings of hundreds of orphans going missing. What many didn't know was that Naruto had authorized these kidnappings. Where they went, you might ask. They went into a single division where they would be trained in the basics of taijutsu, ninjutsu, genjutsu and fuinjutsu. From there they went into one of 3 branches depending on their strength. The first and most common is Root, a special group of shinobi that specialize in infiltration, espionage and assassination. The second branch was called the Huntsmen, a select group of individuals that were heavy hitters, raised for the single purpose to eliminate enemy camps and large number of shinobi entering their borders. The idea of this group came from when Toshiro led the force to attack the capital 3 years ago. So he designed these to act as defensive branch that would eliminate all threats that came within the Otsutsuki borders. The final and rarest group was the Crimson Winds, each assigned to the most important figureheads of the Otsutsuki Empire. There were 12 in total, just like the 12 apostles. There would be a Hyuga, Uchiha, Inuzuka, Aburame, Akamichi, Yamanaka, Nara, Uzumaki and 5 others. A close-range fighter, a mid-range fighter, a long-range fighter and finally a medic. Currently he only had 11 for each as he was missing the Uzumaki, however that would be sorted out soon. The training for each of the branches was overseen by Danzo Shimura and they were each taught to be completely loyal to Naruto. Naruto stood in his office overlooking the toe below. The new village of Konoha was a vast and great, with walls too high for anyone without cage-leveled chakra reserves to climb it. His white hair was longer now, going down to his shoulders with 2 chin-length bangs framing his face. He was also wearing a white kimono with black lining, keeping it closed was a black slash. Sir, looking over his shoulder Naruto saw one of his Root soldiers stood there holding a scroll. Root soldiers wore an all-black battle outfit with a plain white mask. They also carried multiple hidden kunai pouches and a katana strapped to their backs. What is it? Our spy from Omegacure has returned. The spy spoke monotonously. Then why is he not here reporting his mission report? He is here, sir. Moving forwards, the root member placed the scroll on the table and Naruto looked down at it. Moving forwards, he picked up the scroll and opened it up to see a storage seal. Naruto Otsutsuki, my name is Hanzo. Nephew of Toshiro. You may have defeated my uncle, however I hope you did not believe that his empire would become yours. In fact, it is mine now. So if you want to have my empire, come and get it. Also, if you want the body and the Byakugan back, you have to return the 2,000 troops that remain from my uncle's invasion force or to be returned to me. Opening up the storage scroll, he saw the severed head of a root member. His Byakugan, all-seeing white eye, was gone. He studied over the disembodied head and then back at the letter before the head once more. He waved his hand and the root member left the room. You have made a mistake thinking you can threaten me, Hanzo. I will destroy. For 3 years peace had reigned, but like all things they had to come to an end. Otsutsuki rise. 3 years. Hanzo smiled, and that in itself was an odd sight, if not downright rare to see. The reason for his happiness was the 2,000 men moving through the gate of Omegacure. With this his forces will continue to grow. Soon he would be able to prove to the world that he was better than his uncle, and he would do it by destroying the Otsutsuki. Outside the gate was Naruto stood with 11 guards flanking him. The guards themselves wore samurai outfits similar to the armor that Hashirama and Madara used to wear. Over this they wore a blood-red cloak, and a straw hat over the top. The sleeves of the cloak hid the arms, making it impossible to see their arms. On the back of the cloak was a single white moon. Moving forwards, one of his guards handed over a scroll to Naruto, but he didn't raise his hand to get the scroll. He simply stared at the man with cold blue eyes. His guards did the same. Slowly the cold gaze turned to Hanzo, this time with his Sharingan, copy wheel eye, activated and spinning around slowly. Hanzo, give it to me yourself. Naruto shouted. Gritting his teeth, Hanzo moved forward slowly. Passing the shinobi with the scroll, he snatched it out of his hand and handed it to Naruto. Now that wasn't so hard, was it? He asked mockingly. He smirked when Hanzo started grinding his teeth together. Now I have another offer. Oh really, and what would that be? Asked Hanzo. You will hand over control of your empire to me and do so with a smile on that face. Naruto spoke. What? Hanzo seethed. You dare come here and demand I hand over my empire? Hanzo said. I should kill you now. I do think so. Also, you think you can kill me? I killed Hashirama and Madara. You are nothing but an infant compared to me. Naruto said arrogantly. I know, but I doubt you can defeat all my men with only 11 men. Hanzo said. Who said I am alone? Naruto said before he clicked his fingers. With that, multiple explosions rocked the area behind the two warriors. What? Asked Hanzo in shock. Did you honestly believe that the 2,000 men remaining from your uncle's invasion force would still be loyal to AIM after 3 years? How idiotic, he said with a smug smirk. In fact, the 2,000 men from before are completely loyal to me. Die. Pulling out his kusarigama, he went to strike Naruto, however one of his guards allowed a katana to fall out of his sleeve. Gripping it in his hand, he struck upwards, blocking the kusarigama. The others pulled out multiple weapons and attacked Hanzo. The first pulled out a kunai and slashed upwards, however Hanzo leaned backwards, avoiding the strike. A kick impacted against his ribs, sending him skidding across the ground. A third appeared with an uppercut to Naruto's chin, which sent him stumbling backwards. They were like a well-oiled machine as they brutally attacked Hanzo. Charge! With that single word, an army burst from the tree line and charged into the destroyed gates of Omegacure. Smirking, Naruto turned around and began his journey back to Konoha. 4 people appeared beside him. The first was Hoshi with his Byakugan, all-seeing white eye. Beside him was Hachiro with bone swords in his hand. Guro stood beside him with a Sharingan, copy wheel eye. These were 3 of his Crimson Wind Guards. Otsutsuki rise. 3 years. Coming to a stop, Naruto looked into the cell to find Tobirama strapped to a chair. His body was broken and beaten from the hours of torture per day. The man was tough and had only just recently broken. All the man's secret projects had been spilled. For example, the Uchiha police force. But now he had improved it so that there was both the Uchiha and Hyuga clans. There was a few more secret projects the man had thought up, but he either didn't have the money or resources. He, however, had all those things. "Tobirama, how are you today?" asked Naruto calmly. Like usual, the man just stared at him. "You're in luck, your shit life comes to an end today." Clicking his fingers, a figure appeared beside Naruto with a bow in hand. "Kill him." With a nod, the man released an arrow which lodged itself deeply inside Tobirama's head. "Sir." Turning around, he faced the root member. "Genryusai-sama, the Uzumaki clan head, has arrived in the village." "Really? Now that's interesting." He moved forward and passed the root member. "Otsutsuki, rise. Perfect plan." "Ah, Genryusai Dono, how lovely it is to see you again." The cheery voice of Naruto filled the office. Moving forwards, Naruto shook hands with the elderly Uzumaki man before he moved round and sat down in his seat. "You're looking young as usual. Spare me the pleasantries, Naruto Dono." The dull tone in which Genryusai spoke made the atmosphere go tense instantly. "We both know that I didn't come here to share pleasantries and to instead ensure the safety of your clan." Naruto finished while resting his head on his right hand, which was leaning on the table. "To be honest, you had nothing to fear. I'd need an army of over 50,000 strong just to breach your walls. Then of course there's the fact I'd need to defeat your army of Uzumaki brothers and sisters." Naruto praised, which in itself was becoming rarer. Especially after the death of Guan, Naruto had become cold and withdrawn. "You have yourself, the man who defeated both Hashirama and Madara. The one-man army with unmatched genius," Genryusai said. "Is that what they say now?" It was a rhetorical question, and Genryusai simply stared at Naruto with a cold look in his eyes. "I saw your guards outside. Very few, might I add. Are you that sure whatever you offer won't stop me from killing you and your guards, before ordering my men to destroy Uzushiogakure?" That seemed to invoke a reaction. A flinch of the man caused a smirk to mar his features. A smirk that hid ulterior motives. "So what were you going to offer for an alliance?" asked Naruto. "We would like to become your vassal so we can operate on our own. We will provide you with supplies, seals, weapons and volunteers." Genryusai said. "I don't really enjoy you working alone." "No, I don't like that at all." Genryusai grit his teeth. The deal was great. At least he was been provided troops, unlike the previous deal he had struck with the Senju clan. "What do you want then?" asked Genryusai. "I don't know. If he wasn't such a well-trained shinobi, he would have face planted." So instead he settled for glaring at Naruto. He opened up a drawer in his desk and pulled out a picture. He placed it down so Genryusai could see who was in the picture. It was a picture of Genryusai and his wife hugging their daughter Mito. "Your daughter is beautiful, is she not? Stay away from her," growled Genryusai. "Or what? You'll kill me?" Naruto said mockingly. "Now why don't you calm down? I wouldn't dare hurt your daughter." "Then what do you want? Who do you care for more? Your daughter or your village?" Silence followed his question before he bowed his head in shame. "I thought so. As a clan head you must put your clan before your family." "What are you asking of me?" asked Genryusai. "You know you just don't want to say it." He paused before continuing. "Say it. Say what I know is going through your mind. After all, I am an unmarried clan head to the strongest and largest clan in the elemental nations. By saying what you're thinking, your clan's safety will be assured. After all, it will soon become my clan. If you don't say it, then we may find ourselves entering aggressive negotiations, and I'd hate to do that." Swallowing his pride and the side of him that was refusing to follow Naruto's demands, he spoke. "Naruto Dono, would it appease you if I offered you my daughter's hand in marriage? I think we will be great allies." Standing up, he shook hands with Genryusai. The man in question did so dejectedly, much to the amusement of Naruto. "Otsutsuki, rise. Perfect plan." "What?" shouted a feminine voice. It belonged to a beautiful woman with dark red hair tied into two buns. She wore a white kimono with a green sash keeping it closed. Underneath the kimono was a light blue turquoise top. This was Mito, Uzumaki clan, heir of the Uzumaki clan. "You must be joking." "I am not joking, Mito-chan. I have offered Naruto Dono your hand in marriage," Genryusai said calmly, even in the face of his daughter's wrath. Something which was quite famous among the Uzumaki clan as being worse than her mother's. "Ka-chan would not approve of me marrying that monster." She spat out with a scowl on her face. The thought of Mito's mother made Genryusai frown. After his wife's passing, he had made sure his daughter lived a nice life and had always promised her the chance to marry out of love. Mito had originally planned to marry Hashirama, the love of her life, yet that had been stopped when Naruto had killed him. Yes, well, we don't have a choice. He has threatened to destroy Uzu and would have done had I not offered your hand in marriage to him. Because of this, he has allowed to stay out of the war. If we choose, and volunteers will be allowed to join. Genryusai said, causing his daughter's scowl to deepen. Still, you promised T. Mito, that is enough. You are a grown woman, so act like one. You will be the wife to the Otsutsuki clan head whether you like it or not. The loud tone in which he spoke left no room for argument. Growling, Mito turned on her heel and left the room. Genryusai watched her leave with a frown on his face. Turning to one of the pictures. I hope you will forgive me, he said sadly to the picture of his wife. Otsutsuki rise. Perfect plan. Guro. Appearing from the shadows came one of his generals. Head to the ports on the coast and place an order for other 100 ships which have enough to fit 5 times the amount of normal men upon them. I want them done by the start of the next summer. Nodding his head, the man disappeared in a poof of smoke. Hoshi. Another one of his generals appeared from the shadows in his office. Send word to Hachiro to have his men prepare themselves for war. Then send word to the blacksmiths that they are to double the amount of weaponry and armor they produce each week. Nodding his head, Hoshi disappeared in a similar fashion to Guro. Soon, mother, soon you shall be free. A smirk crossed his features that would strike fear into the hearts of his enemies. Otsutsuki rise. Might of fire. It had been 2 years since the Uzumaki clan had become protectorates of the Otsutsuki Empire. The Land of Fire had its borders extended to take over the Land of Tea, and with the timely death of the daimyo, Naruto was now the only ruler of the Land of Fire. Konoha, the village idea of Madara and Hashirama, had been built. It was the single most fortified village in the entirety of the elemental nations. Nothing could match its defenses. The remainders of the Zetsu force that helped him win the war guarded the village in a machine-like fashion. Sensory seals, genjutsu seals and multiple over-seals from the Uzumaki clan made it impossible to enter the village without being spotted. Even the classification system that the 2 warriors had been integrated as well. Genin, Chunin, Jonin and Anbu. The Otsutsuki Empire had a military force of over 10,000 shinobi and the 7,000 Zetsu warriors that survived the war against the Uchiha Senju alliance. The village itself was now under the direct control of Hiruzen, who answered to Naruto directly. Danzo was appointed his military advisor due to him being the embodiment of Tobirama's mind. In total there was 3,000 Genin, 4,000 Chunin, 2,000 Jonin and 8,000 Anbu operatives. The root forces he and Danzo had been working on had a total of 300 men and women, each Jonin level in strength. That wasn't all, as Mito had been officially married to Naruto and with it had finalized the Uzumaki's alliance to the Otsutsuki clan. Now Naruto had his sights set on the Land of Water. Around the room stood multiple men. Danzo, Hiruzen, Hachiro, Guro and Genryusai. These were his military leaders, generals of his armies. There are 12 islands surrounding the mainland of the Land of Water. In it is a recently created village known as Kirigakure. He looked at each of them. The Land of Water have a force numbering half our own, that's not including the Zetsus. Danzo, Hachiro, you are to perform simultaneous strikes on supply routes, villages and ports on each of the islands. Nothing too severe, just enough so that they can repair it, but enough so that it will need them to push more of their forces into protecting their islands. Why would do that, Naruto-sama? It will make it harder for Danzo, Dono and Hachiro Dono to do the assignment you gave them? Asked Genryusai. I too am confused. Hiruzen voiced his opinion. Hachiro and Guro remained silent. They had served Naruto in the war against the Uchiha and Senjus and despite all odds had come out on top even when things did not go as planned. Danzo too remained silent, however it was for a different reason. As the military advisor to Naruto himself, he helped put together this very plan alongside multiple Nara clan members. By raiding these supply lines it will lessen the number of shinobi in Kiri, and the newly dubbed Mizukage will have no choice but to send more shinobi to defend it. By doing this we will not only lessen the amount of money been produced, but also the amount of shinobi defending the Land of Waters. Danzo stepped forward and began speaking. Our sources say that after 2 months of constant raiding of the 12 islands, The Mizukage will have no choice but to withdraw all attempts in defending the islands and instead focus all efforts in defending the main island. The man spoke monotonously. Thank you, Danzo. Naruto turned to face the rest of his generals. Now when this happens we can take the 12 islands without any trouble at all. Guro, Genryusai, this is where you come in. Your job is to surround the island and then with the help of Hachiro and Danzo you are to launch a full-scale attack on the main island. You are to avoid all villages and instead make straight for Kirigakure. The gates will be opened due to our allies, the Kagaya clan. You have your orders. With a bow all the men left except Hiruzen. Naruto-sama, what of my orders? You are to stay here and protect Konoha, however I need you to send an envoy to what remains of Toshiro's empire. I want them to fully submit themselves to my rule just like their leader has, if not we will attack. If they refuse, I shall personally deal with them. The low tone in which he spoke made a shiver of fear run up his spine. Leave me. Of course, Naruto-sama. Otsutsuki, rise. Might of fire. I heard you were going to attack the land of water. The angelic voice of one Mito Uzumaki, now known as Mito Otsutsuki, said. Naruto, who was currently sat looking at a scroll, turned around to face Mito. His eyes drank in her form, which was barely covered by the nightgown that she wore. Ohoho, did you now? Naruto said in an amused tone. Where exactly did you hear that? I may be a woman, Naruto, but I am in fact trained to be a shinobi, an Uzumaki shinobi to be exact. She said with pride. Do you honestly think sneaking into the Hokage's tower is beyond my skills? Naruto raised his eyebrow. You're quite proud of yourself. Shouldn't I be? I after all am the only shinobi but yourself to be on equal footing with Hashirama and Madara. Naruto smirked. I'm stronger than them, after all I killed them both, remember. His smirk deepened when he saw the sour look on Mito's face. Mito quickly changed the subject. It's a bit soon to be starting a war so soon after the last one. It's not a war. A war is where both sides stand an equal chance of winning. No, this won't be a war, it will be a decimation. The sour look returned to Mito's face. Just like you decimated Hashirama-kun and Madara. Now there's no need to bring them into it. After all, one of his hands went up and tucked a stray piece of red hair behind her ear. You're mine now. That seemed to be the snapping point for Mito as she quickly got to her feet. I will never be yours. She shouted in anger. Naruto allowed an amused chuckle to escape his lips, but that soon changed to a growl as Mito slapped him. Getting to his feet, Naruto stalked forward, but with each step he took, Mito stepped back in fright. Even when her back struck the wall, Naruto did not stop. Mito only just managed to move her body to the side, avoiding the hand that slammed into the wall where her head once was. Spider web cracks formed around his hand. What you don't seem to understand, Mito, is that the moment you said, I do, is the moment you became mine. Naruto growled out. Pushing off, he began moving towards the staircase, but stopped when Mito's voice reached him. You're just a monster. You might be right. He looked over his shoulder. But this world and my empire will remember me as a hero. Otsutsuki, rise. Might have fired too. It was a common thing for the Shodem Mizukage, Byakuran, to be seen pacing in his office. Why, might one ask? It's because of the recent events of the war. Well, it couldn't really be called a war. Everything had been going the way he wanted. He had managed to unite the clans and had created a sizable force of shinobi. His navy was the greatest in all of the elemental nations. Yet he was powerless to stop the advancement of Konoha's forces. Raids had been commenced along the outer islands and he had been powerless to stop them. The only thing he could do was to send troops out and try combat the Konoha shinobi, only to lose. Overall, they had lost 1,000 shinobi from the raids. Another 1,000 along with half of their fleet were lost when they tried to attack Uzushiogakure, which was the main staging ground for all the attacks. It had gone terribly wrong. The enemy, however, had lost only 300 men. Now he had begun to fortify the mainland. Sighing, Byakuran sat down and began writing out plans. If he was going to lose this war, he would make sure to take out as much of the enemy with him. Otsutsuki, rise. Might have fired too. With Danzo. Danzo looked over the edge of his boat as he watched the shoreline come closer and closer. Behind him were 100 ships holding the army under his command. It was quite, a little too quite. Danzo-sama, our sensors have picked up multiple chakra signatures in the tree line and underneath the sand. Turning around, Danzo watched one of his root agents. How many of them are there? 300. Danzo hummed. Turning back, he faced the misty shoreline. Send word to the commanders of each of the ships. Have fire, water and lightning users aim at the tree line and at those hidden under the sand. Wind users are to stop any ninjutsu and weapons from getting close to the ship. Earth users and kenjutsu specialists are to follow my lead. Nodding his head, the root agent disappeared in a shushin. A few moments passed before all hell broke loose. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. Fire style. Fire dragon jutsu. Lightning style. Lightning dragon jutsu. Lightning style. Earth cutter jutsu. Wind style. Great breakthrough. Wind style. Wind dragon jutsu. Water style. Water dragon jutsu. Water style. Wild water wave. Every type of jutsu, whether it be fire, wind, lightning and water, launched itself from the ships and onto the ground. Kunai with and without explosive tags also came from the ships. From the ground, jutsus and kunai also rained down upon the ships. However, the wind jutsus from Danzo and the other wind users stopped the ships from being damaged. Smirking, Danzo turned to the Uzumaki around him. Have you prepared the seals? A nod of the head was all the answer he needed. Activate them. Chakra seeped from their bodies and entered into multiple seals all over the ships. A misty blue-like dome appeared around each and every ship. Jutsus, kunai and shuriken bounced off the ships, while jutsus, kunai and shuriken from the ships managed to get through. All the while the ships moved ever closer to the shoreline. Otsutsuki rise. Might have fired too. With Hachiro. Hachiro stood wearing the same armor and double-bladed axe as what his brother Guan once wore. They had managed to scavenge from the battleground. Since then there had been multiple alterations and enhancements to both of them. Beside him stood Genryusai. Together they were going to launch an attack from the north. Danzo was attacking from the east while Guro was attacking from the west. From the news Zetsu had reported, Danzo was already engaging the enemy. Guro, however, was having his troops entering the mainland in a steady stream. Only 10 to 20 every hour. His thoughts were broken when multiple Kiri ships appeared from the mist. The fleet under his command had a total of 100 ships with just short of 4,000 men in total. That wasn't including the additional 200 bandit ships and a total of 3,000 bandits that had been hired. Smirking viciously, Hachiro turned around and began issuing orders. Fire upon the ships, they won't be able to get close without losing half of their fleet. Oda, have your bandits engage them first. Excuse me, Oda said sharply. They are shinobi and we will be slaughtered. Naruto-sama has paid you good money to serve him. You will do so. Hachiro paused for a moment before continuing. Also, if you have forgotten, I too have shinobi under my command and will slaughter you as well. Another thing to remember is that you outnumber them at least 3 to 1. What are you waiting for? Get on with it. Oda glared hatefully at Hachiro before stalking off. Otsutsuki rise. Might have fired too. With Danzo. Jumping off the edge of the boat, Danzo ran across the surface of the water alongside 300 shinobi. His katana glided across the surface of the water. The Kiri shinobi saw this bold movement from the enemy, but every move to stop them resulted in their men being cut down. Stop them from getting closer no matter the cost. With a roar, the two sides met in a clash of steel and bodies. Dodging to the side, Danzo sliced the neck of a Kiri shinobi before spinning around and slicing the stomach of another. Jumping backwards, he avoided a water dragon jutsu only to see 3 of his men get killed by the very same technique. Landing with a splash of water, he formed a ram seal before raising both hands. Wind style. Wind blades. Swinging his hands forward, the wind blades sliced through multiple enemy shinobi. More and more men, whether they be Kirigakure or Konohagakure shinobi, fell to the ground. The once blue sea turned red with blood. Another round of battle cries attracted the attention of the battling shinobi. Danzo watched with satisfaction as more Kirigakure shinobi were killed, and eventually the army of 300 were reduced to nothing. Overall, the army just short of 2,000 men now had an army of 1,650. The enemy, however, had a total 2,700. It would take a miracle for Kiri to win. Rest. We leave for Kiri in an hour. Danzo spoke. Pulling out a scroll, he began writing out the recent news of his mission. Otsutsuki rise. Might have fired too. With Hachiro. Hachiro smirked viciously as a 10th Kiri ship was sunk. Now only 20 Kiri ships came towards them, with 5 severely damaged. He could taste victory, especially with the 200 bandits' ships closing in. "Prepare our ships into Formation C," Hachiro ordered. Formation C was an ingenious and simple naval tactic thought up by Hachiro. It required 4 waves of attacks. The first wave was basically firing down upon the enemy with harpoons and catapults. The second wave was having part of the fleet engage the damaged fleet in either attempt to further weaken them or destroy what remained of them. The third wave consisted of ninjutsu and explosive tags destroying more and more of the fleet. The fourth and final wave consisted of the rest of the fleet destroying what remained of the enemy. A vicious tactic that was created to completely destroy the enemy and leave no survivors. "Genryusai Dono," Hachiro spoke to the elderly Uzumaki. "Would you send word to Naruto-sama informing him of our near arrival to the mainland?" "Of course, but you should know that the battle is not over yet. Plenty could happen from here to the end of the battle." Genryusai spoke sagely. "I think we both know that victory is assured." "I know." Screaming and shouting made the two leaders look to see the bandits engaging the Kiri shinobi. Explosions and jutsus were been thrown in all directions. Dead bodies falling overboard and dyeing the water red with blood. "Move forwards and commence with the third wave." "Hachiro Dono, we still have the bandits out there," Genryusai said urgently. "I know, but if there's one thing my brother and Naruto-sama taught me, it's that you never trust your enemy even if they are your allies." Turning to face Genryusai, he spoke once more. "Besides, they're only bandits, scum. We'd be doing the world a favor by getting rid of them. Anything else you would like to add?" Gritting his teeth in anger, Genryusai just glared at the bandits and Kiri shinobi. "Fire everything we've got at them." Ninjutsu and kunai came from the 200 Konoha ships and rained down upon what remained of the bandit and Kiri ships. "Hold your fire." On those 3 words everything stopped, allowing the Konoha shinobi to see the destruction they caused. What had once been a sizable force of bandits was now in ruin. There was the odd 1 or 2 ships slightly damaged with the rest in pieces floating in the sea. The Kiri ship, however, was completely gone. As for survivors, the bandits had around 30 to 35 men left while the Kiri force was all but gone. Otsutsuki rise. With Naruto. Naruto and Mito were the picture of nobility and beauty. The two walked at a sedated pace with Mito hooking one arm under his. The two were currently enjoying the annual festival that announced the triumph of the Otsutsuki clan. Naruto had left his snow-white hair in its usual wild and untamed style. Covering his body was a white kimono with magatama decorating the collar. Mito, however, wore a deep blue kimono with flowers decorating the bottom. The two would smile at those around them like a perfect couple, but when no one was watching, Mito would act sour, much to the amusement of Naruto. "Naruto-sama," a voice said, gaining the attention of Naruto and Mito. Breaking away from a group of children, Naruto moved towards the shinobi. Straightening up, Mito watched as the shinobi handed over a scroll to Naruto before disappearing in a shushin. Naruto looked down at it before looking towards her. "I'm going back to compound. You can stay if you wish." She nodded her head stiffly. Nodding his head at her, he too disappeared in a shushin. "Mito-sama." The woman in question turned around to see Hiruzen walking towards her. "How are you?" Mito allowed a smile to cross her features. "I'm fine, Hiruzen, how about you?" "I am good, thank you, Mito-sama." He looked towards the alleyway and back to Mito. The woman nodded her head and the two walked into the alleyway. Once they were sure that no one was around, Hiruzen turned back to Mito. "Do you have it?" Mito reached into her kimono and pulled out a scroll. Hiruzen held out his hand, however Mito did not hand anything over to him. "Are you sure this is all you need? I nearly got caught and he has been suspicious of me for a while now. I won't be able to get hold of any more information. It is all I will need, I promise you." Sighing, she handed over the scroll. "Thank you, Mito-sama. With this we can avenge Hashirama-sama and Tobirama-sama." Smiling, Hiruzen left the alleyway. Mito watched him go before waiting a few minutes, then she too left. Otsutsuki rise. Might have fired too. With Naruto appearing in the compound, he sat down before unrolling the scroll. In it was the seal for storage, so channeling chakra into the seal, he said, "Kai." In a cloud of smoke, 3 scrolls appeared on top of the original. Grabbing one, he opened it up and began reading its contents. "Master, I have recently eliminated 300 Kiri troops with minimal losses. The eastern shoreline now belongs to the Otsutsuki Empire. By the time you receive this, me and my army shall already be on our way to Kirigakure to engage the Mizukage. On other news, I have received word from Guro that he too has captured the western shoreline without engaging the enemy and is also making his way towards Kirigakure. I suspect that by the time you receive this, he shall have already set up camp out of the range of the enemy's sensors and preparing his men for the battle that is soon to come. Danzo Shimura. Naruto allowed a smirk to cross his features. Danzo was a shady character, yes. Oh, there was no doubting that. His loyalty, however, was assured. The man was insanely loyal to him and his cause due to the fact he was raised believing the land of fire should rule over all. His plans were to do just that. Placing the scroll on the table, he grabbed another one. Master. On my way to the mainland, I encountered Hachiro and we made our way to the northern shore. During our travel, we were attacked by what I believe to be the remainder of Kiri's fleet. Hachiro destroyed them with efficiency and ruthlessness and even destroyed the bandit fleet you paid for alongside them. I do not believe Hachiro is fit to lead his men into battle and would like for you to make me commander of mine and Hachiro's armies as to avoid unnecessary losses. Genryu Sai. Sighing, he took in a deep breath. Genryu Sai was loyal to his country and family just like all Uzumaki. And just like all Uzumaki commanders, he was loyal to the men under his command. Hachiro was loyal to him alone and his brother, but now that his brother was dead, Hachiro was now extremely loyal to him. It got to the point that he would kill himself if Naruto asked him. Naruto then picked up the final one. Otsutsuki Emperor, you may have my uncle Toshiro under your command and may have killed my cousin Hanzo. However, I as the new leader of my father's empire will not allow myself to be under your command. I warn you though that if you do try and declare war against me, I will crush you. The salamander. Underneath it was another seal, and after releasing it he found the head of the envoy that he sent to what remained of the empire, that Toshiro and his sons. What arrogance! Naruto spoke out loud. Whoever this mysterious cousin of Hanzo, he was arrogant. Extremely so. His empire was small, consisting of only rain, grass, waterfall and stone. When Toshiro was in control, they had a military force of 15,000 due to the fact that the entire civilization besides the children and the elderly were part of it. After Toshiro's death, they had a force of 10,000. Then it lowered down to 3,000 after Hanzo's death. From what he knew, Rain was no longer part of the alliance due to the crushing defeat they suffered. He could use that as a staging ground for his conquests. What arrogance! Turning around, Naruto watched Mito enter the room. Who is arrogant? Hanzo's mysterious cousin. He chuckled. He believes that he can defeat me. That seemed to get a small smile from Mito. Otsutsuki Rise. Might have fired too. Walking through the forest on a black horse was Naruto. He wore his usual battle outfit with a katana strapped to his waist and a dao blade on his back. Beside him was Hiruzen, who had a staff strapped to his back and his crimson wind guards. His army had a total of 4,000 men. 2,000 were members of Hiruzen's army and 2,000 men Zetsu soldiers. Naruto came to a sudden halt when Hiruzen's staff appeared underneath his neck. That's far enough, Naruto. Looking to the left, he saw Hiruzen glaring at him. What are you doing, Hiruzen? I'm ending this war. I suggest you surrender and I will make your death quick and easy. Naruto laughed. Ought to be young and ambitious. He laughed once more before staring at Hiruzen with an emotionless look. I'm afraid you will die. Hiruzen swung his staff around only for Naruto to swing his sword upwards, avoiding his head being hit. Hiruzen jumped back into the trees along with 200 of the shinobi in his army. Follow me. Jumping in the opposite direction, he began running away along with the rest of his army. Wait, Hiruzen said, stopping his army from following. Split up and flank them. With a nod of his head, the men split into two groups. Running through a set of hand seals. Fire style. Firebomb. From his mouth a small ball of fire launched itself into the air. Explosion. After it got past the tree line, the ball exploded like a firework. A roar indicated that more men were coming from the below him. Droves upon droves of men and women dashed past him and after Naruto. Naruto looked over his shoulder at the incoming enemy. Over 10,000 shinobi were coming towards him according to the Zetsus. Each from the ninja villages, Iwa, Kumo and Suna. There was even some from his own lands mixed in amongst them. Growling, Naruto came to a stop and quickly slammed his hands into the ground. Wood style. Deep forest emergence. Many were in shock upon seeing the famous wood release been used, and so it temporarily stopped both sides from charging. Naruto smirked upon seeing the jutsu working perfectly as a forest of trees spring from the ground, trapping the enemy shinobi in its grasp. It was the only jutsu he could use properly from Hashirama's arsenal. His ability to use wood release was because he had ordered Zetsu to recover the blood of the Hashirama and implant it into his own body. Not stopping to see his enemies struggle, he began sprinting forwards in the opposite direction. His army soon followed. Naruto, there is a cliff just ahead. Both halves of Zetsu appeared beside him. Nodding his head in acknowledgement, Naruto began springing forwards quicker. It wasn't long before he came to a stop at the edge of the cliff. He looked over the edge. Turning back to Zetsu, he spoke once more. Order the men to not stop no matter what. They're to jump off this cliff. Zetsu did not move immediately, so Naruto carried on. Zetsu, get it done. Nodding his head, the creature, man, formed the ram seal before a burst of chakra came from his body. It's done. With a nod, Naruto watched as his men burst from the tree line, and while a few were hesitant, still jumped off the edge of the cliff as ordered. Earth style. Deep cave. There was rumbling from the cliff before it went still. Earth style. Mobile core. A massive pillar of rock sprung from the side of the cliff and stopped the falling shinobi from falling to their deaths. Naruto watched them disappear into the side of the cliff before turning around and facing the tree line. It didn't take long before the army of shinobi burst through the tree line. When they saw Naruto waiting, they hesitated before charging once more. They had the advantage in numbers, so courage filled them to the brim. It was obvious that an army of just under 10,000 men could defeat just one. Right? 2 words destroyed that very theory. 2 words that truly marked Naruto as a good and out to rest the rising doubt in the minds of those who didn't believe in his power. Just as the army were about to hit Naruto, the man in question raised both his hands and took a deep breath. Shinra Tensei. Dust, rock and bodies were flung backwards as they collided with an invisible force field that spread out from Naruto's body. In a matter of seconds, what had once been the edge of the cliff was all but gone, and with it, over 4,000 men lay scattered in the debris. Hiruzen watched in shock as Naruto rose up from the smoking crater without a single scratching marring his handsome visage. In one hand he held a katana, while in the other lightning and fire crackled around it. Tell me, Hiruzen, how did you manage to amass a force this size? Naruto spoke. Hiruzen, however, kept tight-lipped and stared defiantly at the man floating in the air. Very well, you refuse to answer my question. It's a shame, really. You could have become a powerful warrior had you not so foolishly thrown your life away. Then he disappeared. Stay on guard, Hiruzen shouted out. The only answer he got from his men were screams of death as they dropped like flies. Everywhere he looked, more and more of his men fell to the ground, clutching their throats as blood squirted out from between their fingers. Fire style. Great fire annihilation. From Naruto's mouth burst a wave of roaring crimson flames that seemed to eat up the very ground itself. Water style. Water wall. Hiruzen along with 10 other men released water from their mouths in hopes of quelling the roaring flames. Thankfully it did so, and a blanket of hot steam covered the area. Wind style. Violent tornado. The steam was sucked into a violent spinning tornado. Inside it, Hiruzen could make out the figure of Naruto as he spun faster and faster. Some of his men were caught in the winds, and soon blood seemed to take its place in the tornado. Gritting his teeth, Hiruzen ran through a set of seals. Earth style. Earth wall. A wall of earth burst up and protected Hiruzen along with those behind him. To his relief, those following under him copied him and also summoned a rock wall to protect them from the tornado. Slowly they waited until the tornado calmed down, and when it did, Hiruzen motions upwards. Like their title suggested, they sneakily moved up the wall and looked over the wall. There Naruto stood waiting in the center. Motioning forwards, a huge chunk of his remaining forces charged forwards and engaged Naruto. Swords and kunai implanted themselves in his body. Cheers sounded throughout the area as many believed that Naruto was defeated. Hiruzen was not convinced. Naruto was calm, too calm for someone that just got stabbed a multitude of times. It was then he noticed the large build of chakra. Get out of there, UF. Whatever he was going to say was silenced by the large explosion that rocked the very ground they stood on. The rock wall he stood on was all but destroyed, with a few bits still remaining. Body parts, blood and burning bodies were scattered throughout the area. Along with this were the few men still remaining that crawled along the ground hoping to get free from their oppressor. Hiruzen was one of them as the ringing sound in his ear deafened him. The blood and burning smell of death attacked his nose, making him gag slightly in disgust. Slowly he got to his feet and saw he had been blown right to the edge of the first crater Naruto had created. A new one stood where another 2,000 of his dead men now lay. All throughout the area Hiruzen could make out the remaining 4,000 men that crawled to their feet shakily. Only for him to watch as Naruto's men dropped from the trees and killed them. From the ground burst Zetsu warriors that also began slaughtering what remaining of his men. I can't remember if I said this or not. Naruto's voice sounded from behind and he quickly swung his Bu staff around to hit Naruto in the face. It was stopped in its tracks by Naruto's burning hand. That's not very nice. I wasn't done talking. He shook his head in disappointment before raising his head. Now then, on to business. Hiruzen coughed up blood as a sword pierced through his lung. I always knew that someone would betray, but I had no idea it would be you. Danzo warned me that it could be, but I never believed him. More blood escaped Hiruzen's lips as he was slowly raised off the ground. I guess from now on I should believe what he says. Ripping his sword from Hiruzen's stomach, Naruto allowed Hiruzen to drop to his knees. Don't worry Hiruzen, you shall serve as a reminder to those that would dare betray me. Your body shall be cut into different pieces and delivered to every shinobi village involved in your little scheme. They shall be reminded that nothing will ever stand in the way of the Otsutsuki clan. Swinging his sword down, Naruto decapitated Hiruzen's head from his shoulders. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.